general messages. Not sure where to start first. Like there were 4 different decks that I pulled the cards from. So let's start in the order of how I did it. This kind of like was the first one. So that kind of like really kind of like came to me like in a rush, like really kind of like I felt really good, both of them. Milky Way, given that we are going through the period of Libra transit. No guys, this is not reading for Libra, this is reading for all signs. We are simply going from the end of September till the end of October through transit of Libra, meaning Libra people have their birthday, I believe, starting 28th to 20th. So Milky Way, as you know, the Earth is part of this kind of like whole sets of galaxies that are kind of like all swirling. And just like when you compare that like with hurricanes and with tornadoes, like kind of like eye of the storm, they are enormous, right? So this one over here that shows a little dot, this is our solar galaxy over here. So you can just imagine how a small dot Earth is, and then how much smaller, non-existent to our eye dot is basically makes us. So I really think this kind of like is telling us to shed our ego, to kind of like understand the process that we are part of one big thing. And especially in the West, we are living with individualism, which I, as an Aquarius, really love. But we are kind of like forgetting that pushing in one way is completely neglecting the other, right? Because look what is happening right after gaining this perspective, after understanding, well, you know what? Even if I hate you, if I harm you, actually I'm harming myself. It's like, you know what they say, you know, you cut your nose to spite your face. I think it might be actually a healing period. Keep in mind that Libra is all about bringing things in balance. It's kind of like really important, the transition we are going through. And then we are getting Waterfall as a follow-up card. Actually 2 of them came out together. And so look at this cascading, beautiful kind of like falls coming out here. And I don't think there is any one of us coming in a sunny day on the edge of this kind of like and saying, oh my gosh, I'm not being taken by this, I'm not feeling really relaxed. But I really feel that these 2 cards combined is basically sending us message that maybe we are coming to the edge of our comfort zone, and we are finding ourselves maybe fighting to resist moving past, you know, that, I don't know, perceived precipice. What is next? Where do I go forward? Maybe kind of like we went on like using our way so far on the ledge, and now we have to figure out who we are, how we can be, what we can become, and what we can do. So I think like coming to the spirit messages, spirit is asking us to step beyond that edge. You know, like that's a Fool card in tarot. The entire tarot is basically based on the Fool as the card. That's the God that is descending, as above so below. And here it's like Regis perspective. If you're struggling, then something is not effortless. So allow yourself to do so with ease rather than struggle, right? So I get it that at times like physical exertion is necessary, but when kind of like we are performing things with fluidity and grace, like even when something seems to be very kind of like daunting, then we actually really find that, you know, the movement is actually making us kind of like move effortlessly. It looks like that we are going to, because Libra is about communication. Don't forget that, yes, they are like lovey-dovey sign, but it is about communication. So in this like very kind of like tribal world that we are currently living in, I feel this is a great news, right? So remember, if from all this entire reading, from all the signs for your sign, you have to remember something. Remember that approach the present situation or relationship with awareness and grace. Don't try to make it effortless, because it's going to just like be more and more kind of like strain in all of that. Allow. So when you're going to conversation with somebody, just allow things to happen. No matter what they say, yeah, if they irritate you, just let this like flow, because guess what happens with the waterfall? It always kind of finds its way to the ocean, right? Nothing is really barrier. It's kind of like if you have something that is an obstacle, You just like flow around that. So you're going to find that ultimately you come to those calm waters. So it's kind of like really interesting because this card is usually kind of like referring to solar plexus and our breath. So solar plexus is in that navel region. It's really talking about our confidence. It is like really talking in boundaries that we set with other people, right? So breathing is also very, very important, given that we have both air and water. And that's kind of like both suggesting to me that kind of like oxygen. We need to kind of like put things in perspective. Maybe like too much oxygen has been taken out of the room. Maybe we have like some situations where we kind of like feel all we are like talked out. And then I saw these two, which kind of like almost like reinforce this, because now we are dealing with heart chakra and with solar plexus chakra, right? Like gossip card is like really talking about kind of like really trying to find, probably like for maybe once, like it's telling me certainly that we have people who are like really not very savory, that kind of like could be in our surroundings, and we kind of like maybe need to kind of like deal with this, like, because there are some people who are definitely all about prejudice and all about misunderstanding, and we have to find what is inside of us that we are resisting. If people who are like this don't make you angry, then you have to ask yourself why. Because anger is an emotion that has been built inside of us for a reason. And in this society, we are being discouraged of being angry because anger can, as we know, lead to really kind of like devastating actions. But anger really kind of like gives you that sort of like pointers. This is kind of like red flag that something is wrong. And this is kind of like, to me, clearly talking about that we have to find what basically we find in the others. Is that bothers us, that they're very unique and they're not like us, or they're doing something that is like so out there that is just like it's not supposed to be tolerated. So maybe it's the other way around, that other people are not supporting your vision, that maybe there is like some kind of like lack of appreciation. So there is like a complete need to kind of like refocus your life, because this card is called Facade. And this is really talking about reclaiming your life, because look at him, he's like walking on the clouds. He is like literally kind of like descending and kind of like understanding, hey, give me a hand, kind of like, let's kind of like do this together. This also kind of like talks to me about childhood pain. And I know we don't kind of like wake up and say, I have to today deal with the childhood pain. Like, this is not how it really works. But more or less the childhood pain kind of like results, kind of like manifests in everyday things, like how we approach relationships, how we deal with relationships, who are people around us, why are those people around us, etc., etc., etc. So sometimes we are making decisions out of that pain that we don't even notice, that basically has been brewing all these years, and we are simply just mirroring it on the person who is like nearby. Right? So that's kind of like an issue, which I think it's going to be, and maybe this is also part that we need to put in perspective, how much of all this thing that is going on in our life is something that we created, right? Like, so take responsibility. I really think it's really important, because it's kind of like interesting that we didn't get Justice card, but we did get Integration for the Libra passage, which, check it out. Like, what is not in balance here? Look at this. A swan and an eagle. Which one is more important bird? One is like a visionary, and one is like so beautiful and graceful, just like going back to that grace. There is like this lotus flower. There is like this Merkaba, right? Little Merkaba, which is kind of like a theory that we are actually, each one of us, in part of inside of one of these, and that's how we receive our healing, through basically our spinal cord, right? And also there is like this yin and yang over here. As you can see, they're like the opposites, but even each of them contains a little bit of the other, right? So this is basically telling me that with everyone we can find something to break the bread with, right? And I think we have to go in that direction, even if it's a minuscule, even if it's like literally simple as just have a meal, let's just not talk, but we enjoy both food, something basic. That's kind of like really about merging the opposites, sun and the moon. This card, Traveling, is the card about basically, you know, path. As you can see, whatever this horseman is, this kind of card is really talking about enjoying the travel, not the destination. It is reversed though, so I'm really telling myself that maybe destination is important. Maybe it is important, like, I mean, who we want to become, in which direction we really want to go, who do we, like, you know, like if you're making a sculpture, if you're making a sculpture, I cannot talk, then like you're starting with some kind of like major shape, and then you're kind of like putting things out like eyes and nose, let's say if it's the head, right? So you kind of like know what your goal is. So that vision, like, hey, you know what, like maybe I kind of like started with focus too much on the eye, and now this eye is too big, this one is too small. Why not to kind of like try to keep that big perspective and just like keep going with kind of like these instincts. It almost looks like that we are all going to make a conscious choice to be better. And then this card showed up and poised, and this is like, whoa, look at this, so lovely. In fact, in the traditional card rendition of this card integration, it's called Temperance. And it's like talking about this basically merging of the opposites, merging of finding in the middle of patience, right? This kind of like really reminds me also, like kind of like there is this angel, kind of like, which is kind of like here mixing a silver and gold, right? I really think this is like talking about being ready and bringing something to light and being at your best and kind of like confidence, and that's happening only when we kind of like shed kind of like things that are not good in us, when we realize, this person is doing this, I don't like this in this person, but do I do this? Oh yeah, I have to kind of like check that in me, sort of a thing. So be ready for anything right now in this period. It's kind of like going to be really interesting because you will be very confident and people will be responding to the confidence. And it's kind of like when you're in the zone, you tend to have less friction, right? So like everything becomes like more kind of allowing and more gracious. And kind of like, let's say rich people can afford to give a better tip. So that kind of like feeling is going to permeate this entire month. So after this general part, let's start with the individual signs. Hi Capricorn, and welcome to your October reading. So let's kind of like first talk about the bottom of the deck and the cards that came as kind of like additional kind of clarifiers. Good card, Love Yourself First. It is really talking about understanding your needs, understanding like what basically can take you forward. Let's kind of like put it in perspective. You are an earth sign, and as earth you might have completely different needs than, for example, water or air. And like there is like no such a thing as judgment. Oh well, mine is better than yours. But when it comes to relationship, it's kind of like how the mix is going to work out. I don't know if you ever tried rum and coke. Well, it depends on how much rum and how much coke is in it for that to really work. There's ice, is there coke warm? So this is kind of like how I really see this card, and there's like a really clear need for establishing some kind of boundaries. Then I got here Discovery card, which is a base chakra, and base chakra does relate to earth element, and it's kind of like really telling me that there is like something from the past still looming over. Maybe it is as simple as you are trying to recapture basically a past that no longer fits. Maybe you are presently upset or struggling with a difficult situation, and maybe you're feeling you're getting way less than you deserve. It's almost like, you know, like, I mean, you're putting lots of efforts and getting like very few, if any, results. So this is clearly talking about, you know, focusing on something else. You see, we also have the moon, which kind of like can talk about is like kind of like false ideals or big ideals and something like really that is like really out there. So there is like kind of going to be a shift this month where you might be ready for a new adventure, and kind of like really willingness to kind of like venture into that, let's say, uncharted territory. And it's going to be a new level of self-care. This kind of like be really, really important. It also kind of like talks about possible commitment or possible kind of understanding what really works for you and what doesn't. The reason why I say this is like that we also have the Rider. Rider is the very first card in Lenormand deck, as you can see, number 1. But the World card here is the very last card in the Major Arcana, which kind of like is the most important. And also we have the Hangman here to boot. So let's go to the Lenormand part first. You got the Rider, you got the Ring, and you got the Tower reversed. I didn't look at Lenormand as reversals previously. I would always read them upright, but recently I am actually developing a need for expanding the meanings. So Rider is always talking about something positive, like, I mean, delivery and news and information and kind of like messaging, right? So when this card shows up, basically, you know, you can be sure that news are going to really follow really, really quickly. And this is one of that kind of like really movement. There is like maybe travel. There is maybe, you know, something that you are moving toward, which kind of like looks like commitment. Now this is kind of like a really tricky combination though, because the Ring and the Tower, and Tower is always talking about government and something serious and something organized and, you know, kind of like some strictness. So two of this kind of like, it's kind of like maybe even looking like, hey, you know what, we need to kind of get together. But also keep this in mind, the Tower can mean a different thing. Tower can also talk about separations. So I really think, given that we have this card, which is extremely important, and this one here, so you have like these two major arcanas, this one being reversed. So instead of like going forward towards something new and something better, kind of like a new cycle, with, you see this like big infinity, kind of like karma accomplished, let's move to the new phase. You know, like there is like some situation that to some kind of like some level is making you feel stuck. This card, when it comes reversed, it's kind of like talking about refusal to explore new avenues, and this kind of like is really not going to help you attain success. So there is like some kind of like stagnation that kind of like set in due to fear. You're kind of like inclined to resist change, and hence you may be kind of like stuck in the present with some kind of like unsatisfactory situation, right? This is also telling me about circle of frustration and possibly boredom. And again, a new approach, a new commitment to something. And mind you, this can be a relationship, it could be work. This kind of like card in regular decks comes with basically 4 fixed signs, which here we see a bird for Aquarius, we see fish for Scorpio. Hello. Oh my gosh, I bought something for you. I just remember I bought something in a pet store for you. And then we have here a rat for you earth signs. Sorry, it was like not me who created. And then a little salamander for fire. So fun fact, why salamander fire? Because in medieval times they used to hide around the fireplace, and when people crank up the fire, of course they would be afraid of the fire and they would just like run away. But people who maybe were ignorant didn't realize that. They really thought they actually lived for the fire, and that's why even to present day they're representing fire. So really this card is telling us about the failure to work at improving yourself or your situation because of your belief and expectation that the world owes you a living. And yeah, I'm being a little critical over here, but I'm just reading cards. So this world reverse implies holding back of personal development and asks you to make a change of attitude, because look at how many great things can happen. And why I know it's attitude, because this is already telling me, the Hanged Man, that you have been already thinking along these ways. Like, right, you were thinking, okay, am I getting what I want to get? What is it I'm missing? In which direction I really need to go, right? Kind of like you're really kind of like going down this path. So I really think this is kind of like really kind of like time for you to kind of like really reassess your attitude and make positive plans to help to alleviate maybe a situation you're currently kind of like finding yourself in. I really think that your personal integrity and self-respect should actually allow you, because look at this, I'm not really reading those Disney kind of like things, but here your self-respect makes you more romantically attractive. Never mind romantically, it makes you more attractive. Self-respect also has to be kind of classified. You need to put parameters on it. So it really is really needed to understand that you know, you have to know that you don't go all the way far in the narcissism land, right? So you need to know how much is you and where the other people come, because that's what this card is talking about. This is kind of like definitely a card of sacrifice. When one person is making a sacrifice for better understanding of the other people. And you know, like, I mean, you see a lots of kind of like TV shows when CEO is going hidden to kind of understand how people sort of like the beat of the company, and sort of like maybe you kind of want to be less reactive and more kind of like listening. My mom always said you have like 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So it's like speak twice as listen twice as much as you speak, kind of a thing, right? So be very careful of still kind of like holding some kind of like stubborn attitudes, right? And resistance to shift, because like this is what this card is talking about, and this is really not a good place to be. This is a great place to be. So look at this. It kind of like the turnaround needs to happen. So something could happen that is almost like illegal. It could be even a move that I see in this time period. And you know, good thing what's going to happen is that you're going to go with something new, and it's going to be so new and so refreshing, and you will kind of like realize how much maybe you suppress yourself along the path. So let's start. You have 8 of Wands reversed. This is really generally a card that talks about love arrows and messages. So we have this kind of like news kind of like repeated. Maybe something is coming delayed, maybe you're waiting for something, or maybe you're going to hear something that you really don't want to hear. 10 of Pentacles. There is like something that could be connecting to your family, to your work, to really what is the core of you. You are being on Earth sign, so this is kind of like really important. And this as well, all 3 are being basically Earth. It's really calling you for kind of like going back to like, I mean, your own essence and kind of like feeling yourself really well. 10 of Pentacles can talk about how you interact with family members. It could be like, I mean, that you will kind of like make sacrifices for your elderly parents or for your children or even pets. And like this is kind of like what people forget. Look at this kitty hanging up over here. Like, I mean, they come to us and we kind of like shush them away. They are members of the family, and it's kind of like really important. And it is not it is selfless to help them, but it's also selfish because they actually can really benefit us so much. They can actually create a better life. I mean, I had a really bad back last week, and they insisted to sleep on top of me, and it was like really hard to even like lie down as it was. So it's like having 2 cats on me. It was like really difficult. But you know, I really think that they realize that something is off. They realize I'm not engaging as much with them. And I read that praying heals, and I'm actually doing much better. So it is kind of like respecting wisdom of even of those who you maybe would shush them aside otherwise. So I really think you really need to pay attention to your immediate surroundings and really kind of like celebrate that. Let's see what is in the base. 10 of Swords reversed. Well, this is not necessarily a bad card, but it worries me a little bit given the rest that I'm seeing over there. This kind of like is talking about some kind of like situation, just like, you know, something that is still brewing from the past, that it could be that you feel, as I said, like hurt, and something is kind of like really not happening the way you thought, or you feel that somebody let you down. Like we're having a 2 10s. There is like some kind of like closure that needs to happen. We are finalizing certain things, and maybe this kind of like is saying like you cannot move forward before this is kind of like defined. And we have the Knight of Swords in the past. I can see that there is a thinking about someone over here, and that somebody is very bright, somebody is very clever, and somebody is really kind of like having possibly an edge. So you know there's like not much messing with this person, but at the same time this person was telling you something. Maybe you want to revisit your past and think what you have been told about whom and about what, right? Because this can actually really talk about that something has been told to you and you just like, I mean, shush it aside. Maybe you already are aware of some items that you need to work on. Maybe you kind of like really felt this person was out of line, because earth and air generally, yes, they're kind of like neutralizing each other, but the earth is going to find air very abrasive, right? It's going to be kind of like at times too much. So let's see what is crowning you. The Tower reversed. And again, I keep getting that message for you this month. I keep getting that you are stubbornly forging forward, that you're being told, and maybe people just like gave up on you. Maybe that's why there's a delay message. Maybe somebody is avoiding you because you have been asked to do something and you're refusing because you believe you can do better. You see, when the Tower shows up, interestingly enough, you have Tower and you have a Tower, but this is not the same. The Tower in Lenormand is not the same meaning as this one. What Tower means in tarot, it really talks about us kind of like building concepts, building life on completely wrong, basically, basis. Imagine if you think that the world is flat, right? So your concept of life would be completely different than the earth is round, right? Especially if you're coming to the edge of that kind of like flat space that some people think is like standing on 4 elephants. But this really talks about not being able to break through. There is like an essence of something that you are not even aware of. So we are going to clarify that. So immediately we have the Fool reversed. So yeah, you're kind of like getting motivated. You want to move forward, but I really don't think that you have a plan, or maybe the plan you have is a little bit half-baked and kind of like it really kind of like needs to go a little bit more in depth, a little bit kind of like more what can be grasped. So what you're feeling, King of Swords. So I guess you're going to kind of like take this to heart, what I'm telling you. You're going to go back and see maybe there is another person you're dealing with who is air. You also have, as I said, Scorpio, Leo, Taurus, and Aquarius, also prominently an Aries in your chart. King of Swords is again talking about possibly a judge, possibly something dealing with the government. You know, I also have to say this. I really didn't want to say it. It was like one of the first thoughts that I had over here. That it looks like that some of you might be separating this month. It looks like that, and again, it's going to kind of like completely sidetrack some of you. You didn't see that happening because somebody was telling you the issues they have, and I don't think it was an ultimatum, but it's going to become an ultimatum because it was like, look, I really need that in a relationship, and it looks like you just like went on your merry ways, or simply kind of like shut down this person, but just because they kind of like didn't really react, it doesn't mean they didn't notice this, because this is really talking about kind of like it would be foolish to move forward the way it is, because that would be natural. The next card, both of them are being reversed, so they are not gelling together, they are not processing together before certain things are put in order. This is really talking about that balance. This is really talking about kind of like grasping what basically the input is, processing them, understanding that you either need to make sacrifices in order for this to continue or not. And if you don't make them, it's almost like a karma, because this is one of those, you know, accomplishment of karma kind of like cards. I probably should start calling that card as well a karma card. I don't do that because it's kind of like right in the now. It's kind of like really telling you really need to work on it. So let's see environment. And there is like your earth sign, King of Pentacles. Okay, I did buy a prop for this. So King of Pentacles is earth sign. It could be somebody who really wants to go very far, really wants to accomplish things in life. It could be a businessman, but when it's kind of reversed, it's somebody kind of like shrewd, somebody who kind of like glorifies money, but somebody who is also highly manipulative, right? Somebody who's going to say to you, hey, I'm so nice and I really care about you, let's do that. But the moment when you kind of like turn your back, it's going to be So how do you like my prop? Put me that in the comments. So this is kind of like King of Pentacles, and I kind of like don't like that, because like this is something, it's not you though, it's kind of like coming in your environment. It could be that your environment is going to push you into kind of reaction that basically is going to just like come out of you, or that somebody will be that reactive toward you. So let's see hopes and fears, and you have the strength. Really good card. The strength really is what you need to work on. You will be going through something that kind of like could be challenging and could be kind of like, it's kind of like really going into unknown, but it's kind of like first, before we get there, understanding that you really need to go there. Ultimately, this is the card of victory, but it is reversed. So when the Six of Wands comes this way, it's really talking about that somebody really wants to feel important. So is this you? You need to speak up. If this is like a partner, then they're feeling they're losing the battle. They're feeling that they don't have the equal standing in a relationship or in a company, or there's like something off. It's also really telling me about, you know, like that people really need to feel important and cared for. I mean, this reverses, like they are not feeling this way. So it is kind of like really important to address it. So let's clarify a few cards that we actually saw there. You actually do have you have like these three majors, which is really important. So, or four, pardon me. So it's that, and combined with like these three cards, it's a shift, because the strength card, it's really talking about that you have to figure out how to really see a bigger picture, how to really overcome what kind of like immediately you would want to do, like that knee-jerk reaction, and sort of like kind of see like how much better things can be. Like you're having two cards with the infinity sign over here, and you see here Kitty is kind of like really patting a little doggy. So instead of like going in a full blast, kind of like full like war, kind of like with a head on, it's kind of like rather a situation with kind of like, okay, so let's see how we can deal with this. It's kind of like let your guard down and see what is like that you're not listening, because it keeps coming to me. So let's actually check that Knight of Swords, and let's see what kind of like stuff may have been addressed. What kind of like stuff may have been addressed? Why is this Knight of Swords here for Capricorn? So we have hope, we have constancy, and we have despair. So if you're dealing with someone, you're dealing with somebody, and like this is specifically going for people who are dealing with an air sign, and this is kind of like their card hope, and it's like this is like something really typical for air signs. They're going to stick with you and be with you. They are going to trust in you, and that hope is like what is really typical for that sign. Once when they lose their hope, they're going to lose everything. They're going to get depressed, and you're going to lose them, and that's when they also become vicious. But it looks like that was like some also constancy involved. Constancy is really important because we see this lady over here. She does have, as you can see, almost like a building blocks over here around her that she's kind of like being supported on. But we also see like, I guess, Parthenon over here, or basically the building, a temple being built over here. So this is kind of like really talking about like where is the vision. And as I said, they were kind of like having their aim at something in a distance, because look at this, like an owl carrying them and pushing them forward, kind of like they were really almost like amusing you, but trying to meet you on your terms, because there is like definitely constancy, and that is really talking about it earthy kind of like element. Where that despair is, despair is kind of like, I think somebody felt hurt and somebody felt kind of like at the end, maybe they felt rejected. And I guess you're hearing probably the recycling trucks. Obviously I'm doing too many readings on Wednesdays, and it's Wednesday recycling, so if you guys didn't recycle today, just go for it. This card is really kind of like really interesting because it is, to me, one of more telling cards. This is my Gypsy card deck, but in original Vera Sibylla card, this is called Jealousy, because if you can see here, like the vase is broken and there is like a main picture of somebody, it's kind of like talking about confusion and unreasonable thoughts, and it's kind of like jealousy and envy and loss of love and sorrow, right? And I can see that was happening here for some of you. I can see this, like, I mean, almost like looks like somebody was telling, or somebody was telling, let's not point it at you because I can see the energy in between. Because this man over here is obviously trying to commit a suicide, right? And it looks like that he's facing some kind of like ruin. I don't know, maybe, but I don't see an indication that it was like really financial issue over here. But you know, these flowers and the letters, like, it's basically more or less suggesting to me the root of the problem are basically envy or jealousy, right? So this is kind of like really talking about kind of like need for just like immediate attention, right? Somebody was really feeling betrayed, or somebody was fearing of not being loved. And if you make an air sign vulnerable, but it doesn't have to be necessarily air sign, because every dating goes through this air part position where you need to have the talk, where you have basically the understanding, like words are being exchanged, you're making agreements. So this is your air element, right? When you go into your element, you're sitting at the table, you're enjoying good food, you're showing this beautiful, you know, Christian Dior scarf because you worked really hard and you kind of like really want to show it off. So it's kind of like different elements has this flair. So there is like something that has been clearly destructive here in the past, and it looks like one thing led to another, and you also, like, I mean, there are two parties that both are hurting. That's what I see over here. Maybe even three parties, because this could be somebody that was interfering from the outside, male or female, but somebody who was very domineering, and as I said, somebody who was like really giving you really cute face, but really was not that cute after all, you know? So let's check this like 10 of Swords here. No, I want just like a few cards. Why is 10 of Swords here for Capricorn? We have joyfulness, we have child, and we have enemy. You see, I do see the third person here, but doesn't have to be necessarily that the person was cheating. It could be something along the lines that maybe an ex was kind of like putting a wedge in between you and the partner. Maybe maybe person was saying, hey, you know what, you need to kind of like minimize what's going on with that. It's kind of like very difficult when you start having like kind of mixed families and mixed relationships, because a new person comes in and like we have our life already, so they're integrating, but they should not be integrating by actually having a second kind of like place. It's kind of like, that's why this card usually shows up that says, okay, so how do I deal with this person with respect, with acknowledging their needs, and kind of like still kind of like dealing with issues that I have. This could be something that has been brewing for a while. It could be that somebody got pregnant. Maybe somebody got pregnant with somebody outside of the marriage, and that kind of like really affected. It also could be that somebody here was dealing with somebody who is married, and somebody who maybe was promising to get divorced, but maybe that was not happening, or maybe that was like never planned to be, because remember what I told you about this person, that they're not really necessarily giving you all this kind of like stuff that, you know, you should. So let me see the Tower. The Tower. Wow. Frivolity, reunion, and death. I don't know why they call this frivolity, because this is supposed to be about lightness of being, about kind of like looking up. See the Tower. When something is not built properly, yeah, you can continue until you kind of like really kind of like smack it down and you die. You don't escape when the hurricane is coming, or you can rebuild it later, right? But this is really also standing for superficiality, inconsistency, and kind of like a carefree joy, sort of like perilous behavior, right? It's kind of like generally positive, but it's also talking about big uncertainty for lovers and relatives. It looks like something rash has happened over here, because this is really talking about, remember, as I said, something that maybe you didn't kind of look clued in. Maybe you really thought you're like in the right path, you're doing the right thing, and there was like a talk about reunion possibly for some of you, but instead it just like brought this, just like here, this like death, this like huge enormous suffering. When that card shows up, and especially when this is kind of like reversed, it's kind of like something that probably really goes deep, that could be very painful, right? This is kind of like bat wings and skull, kind of like really something shocking. Same as the Tower. Something shocking might really happen. Maybe something that you really thought, I got this. Something is kind of like already like in the pocket. It's going to be something that is going to shock you, that you will realize that it was not even close. You know, like sometimes you date people and you get engaged and everything is going the way it is, and then something happens, you break up and you never see again, and then you really wonder what happened. I was like so close to this person. So this is really telling me that situation actually is very negative, and it's the end of something. It's some kind of like crisis, or maybe you have been going through some crisis for a while already. You guys really need to forget the past and go in a different direction. The more and more I'm seeing this combination, the more I'm thinking that there is going to be a separation this month. And it could be because somebody is already taken, or you're seeing that somebody is just not going to change their life enough to modify for the other partner to get in. So just like really want a quick kind of like clarification for the Fool and for the World. This here, it's kind of like very close to that love yourself first. You have a friend and you have a messenger. Rely upon your friends. Ask advice. Ask them where you're stuck. Friends, real friends, will tell you the truth. Like false friends will be there because they can benefit something, status, money, whatever. But you probably know who your real friends are, because they're with you even when you know, even when they don't like you, they're still going to be there with you. And the Fool reverse is talking about a prison and consolation. Like a prison is, again, to me, a card that could be a marriage. It could be somebody who might want to get out of it, but whatever it is, kind of like circumstances are that cannot happen. And I think this kind of like would be probably good explanation for what is happening over here, because I really feel that there are two people who are not in sync. I really feel that one person really wants to make it forward, and to some extent even the other person, but the circumstantial kind of thing is just not going to happen. There is like not a good communication. It really looks like that one person has a family, which could be you, that is like so important that they neglected the other person, or they felt that the other person somehow had to integrate differently, and this person doesn't think that's the case. And hence, in the end, everybody loses. Yes, love yourself first. It is really important. But it's also important that if you want to be in a relationship, that some concessions have to be made. And if, you know, you are dealing with a situation that is really difficult, if you are involved with somebody who's married, or if you're involved with somebody who is not willing to make kind of like a room in their life, you kind of like need to stop, ask yourself if that's the direction you want to go. So, my dear Capricorn, I actually have one more card for you over here to seal the reading. I would love to hear your take on it and your circumstances, because I always learn something else, and you send me your energy when you put your comment. Also, you can find me on Facebook and on Instagram for your daily dose of fix of tarot. And again, this is a general reading, and it goes into directions. It also is good to check your ascendant. It's good to check your, you know, moon sign, your Venus sign, because each month in a general reading resonates differently. But private reading is better than anything else. Unfortunately, the card that you got is coming apart. So let me read it for you. This is what it says. Now it is the time to take separate paths. The coming apart card is a sign to put an end to what is no longer working for you. Has a commitment been broken? Perhaps you need to break a promise or change course because you took on more that you could handle. This is a perfect time to reassess your goals and values. Are your actions in alignment with what you believe in? Or have you created a partnership that is not mutually beneficial? Separation, dissolution, and dispersion are all in focus now. If someone wishes to break away from you, don't chase the relationship out of a sense of fear. The price you'll pay will not be worth the price. Separation brings good fortune. So I guess if there is like no meeting of the minds over here, whether or not you let somebody down or somebody let you down, at this stage, I really think that the repair has to come from the inside. And I really think that you guys will be really focused on the immediate, on the family, more than relationships in this time period. So, your comments, please let me know if I'm right, if I'm wrong. And until the next time, hopefully I'll see you on my social media. Until the next time, I love you.